David, how are you?
Good, buddy. How are you?
Good, thanks, mate. For the listeners tuning in today, this is David. Yep. And I've actually met David through Chris Seipel, who used to teach me at former school I went to, Villanova College. He had me on a podcast. What was it? Jeez, 3 or 4 months ago.
Yeah, about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Something like
I
that.
think things have changed a lot since then.
Yeah, they have. Yeah.
Oh, did you have a beard? Did you have a beard then? Or?
I did have a beard back then. I'm trying to regrow it. My wife hates me having one, and I shaved it maybe a week ago. So
Look, I'm getting stud muffin.
Yeah, I'm going back to Santa Claus just in time for Christmas. Really good. No,
Yeah. So the topic we'll be going over today is family cult.
Yes.
And for David, growing up, it was a little bit difficult because of some of the things and belief systems that his family did uphold with themselves, and led on to David disassociating himself with the family, and unfortunately, they have nothing to do with him anymore. So, but in a broader scheme of things, for people tuning in who may struggle to associate themselves with this particular topic, is in society, if we don't follow certain rules or how we're supposed to do things, we get ostracized and left behind. And yeah, unfortunately, that's the way things work. And I think it's a really important topic to talk about, and that don't be afraid to just be who you are and not have to follow the way things should be. So it's the topic we'll be going over today, and I'll just say discretion warning. What you may say here today from David might be quite confronting, but I want David to be as open, as honest as he can be, because it's his story, and it's been told from his perspective. Anyways, guys, I'm going to head over to David, and I'll ask questions along the way.
That's a good intro. So I was raised as a Jehovah's Witness, and so a lot of people would know them as the people that knock on your door, and they're the friendly people with their suit and tie and whatever else. And so most people would think of them as a religion, but if you actually look into it and you look at what the definition of a cult is, they fit almost every single criterion of what a cult is. And so we got into that when I would have been about 5 or 6, I think, from memory, when my parents split. Yep. So some of my mum's family were in it, some weren't, and my mum and dad were never in it, and they hated it until the time they split. And then when she was vulnerable in a state of sort of despair, they got her, and they promised her or sold her this story of it's ridiculous to get into their beliefs, but they sold her this really great, wonderful sort of happy life story that you enjoy as a Jehovah's Witness, and that you enjoy after death as a Jehovah's Witness, so like their next life thing. And she was in it, and so from then on we were raised as Jehovah's Witnesses. I should probably say, I'm going to sit here and tell you some bad stories about being a Jehovah's Witness and my personal experience, and but I guess there are some aspects of it that were really good. Yeah. You had a group of friends that you always hung out with, and you didn't have to do anything to be friends with. They were always there. So you went to your church, and that was your group of friends.
So I guess it's probably not a bad thing in that, you felt like you could rely on them in the darkest of times.
Well, maybe, because the whole nature of that religion, I'll call it a religion, whatever you want to call it, but the whole nature of it is to be as holy as you can, and that involves dobbing on everyone else. If you see something bad. No, mate. So I had my mum dob on me for things that I was doing as a child growing up. Mate. So I would have. So the equivalent of their priests are called elders.
Yep.
And they would have elders come to your door. Back to we were raised in it, and my dad and mum, when they separated, he wasn't in it and mum was. So I had this sort of my brother and my mum and I were, and I had this sort of half-life where you would go with dad on every second weekend, and it'd be parties, birthdays, fun, and then you'd go back to mum's house and it would be Bible study, church, Bible study.
And what do you think, people are part of this community, why are they so focused and oriented on Bible studying and the bigger and better questions of life, as opposed to just the smaller basic things and what your dad could provide for you?
They're directed to by the group that runs it. So they are forced to do it. And so if you understand the nature of how it works, so growing up, it's changed a little bit now. It's a little bit less intense. And I don't mean less intense. It's not. It's just different. So when I grew up, for example, my week would be, I would come home from school on a Monday and I would have Bible study. We would study the Bible ourselves and the publications that religion put out, their magazines.
Wow.
Tuesday night from 7:30 till 9:30, we would go to church. Wednesday night, we would do Bible study for the Thursday night, because then Thursday night we would go and do another church session, but it'd be an informal sort of one at someone's house that we all did. Then Friday night, you would come home and do your preparation for witnessing the next day. So then Saturday morning, you would go door knocking, witnessing. Saturday afternoon, you had a bit of time to yourself, but then you had to prep for Sunday, which was the other meeting. So you would prepare the watchtower for Sunday.
So there's no break at all.
Mate, and that's the nature of some of those organisations. They never give you time to think for yourself. If you have time to actually stop and think and stop the programming, then I always think of it as, I always use the term when I explain to people as, you need a circuit breaker. You need something to shock you into stopping what you're doing and looking at it. Yeah. And when you're in it, you don't have time to do it. I read a book once by a guy, Steve Hassan, and he's quite an expert in the field of cults, and he wrote a book called Combating Cult Mind Control, and he talked about his experience in the Moonies, and his family actually worked so hard to try and break him out that they kidnapped him and held him against his will for a few days. I think it might have even been like a week or something. And he ended up, I think, even jumping out of a hospital window to try and get away from him. So strong was the programming. And eventually he finally had this moment where he realised, and it all sort of came tumbling down.
Why do you think people go to such an extent to stick with this mentality that this community, tells them what they should and shouldn't be doing? Is it because they're afraid to be vulnerable, and they're afraid that if they don't follow these particular teachings that they won't end up in the happy place where they're told to believe that they will end up going to?
Yeah, so I guess it depends on the perspective of the person you're talking about. So the rank and file Jehovah's Witness, they want to end up in what they call the new system, which is like heaven for Catholics, but it's a different version. But it's the same sort of concept. Yeah. They want to end up there, and so they have to do everything they can that the organisation says they need to do, because the organisation is directed from God, allegedly, and they have to do everything that organisation says. So they just do it because they believe that Jehovah God is judging them, and he's using this organisation to direct them, and to go against the organisation is to go against Jehovah God himself, and so they follow blindly.
And when growing up, simple things is like just bringing like, a maid over to your house. Doesn't happen. No,
so no birthdays as a Jehovah's Witness, no Christmas as a Jehovah's Witness. So when you're growing up as a kid, other kids from school invite you to birthday parties, so you don't get no fairy bread or anything like that. And you're not even there. The worst part, and this happened to me a couple of times, is when you actually go witnessing and you knock on the door of a party that you're supposed to be at, and you're like 10 or 11 dressed in suit and tie.
Feeling embarrassed.
Oh mate, it is the worst feeling. There's obviously worse things in life, but it's really a difficult spot to be in, because you don't even understand it as an 11-year-old or a 12-year-old or a 13-year-old. Like most 30, 40, 50-year-olds that I talk to that were in it, if you question them on their beliefs, they don't even understand it. No. They just follow what they're told to follow. And so as a 15-year-old or 13-year-old, you don't understand it, and you're at the door while all your mates are saying, come in, let's go, we're swimming, I've got whatever going on, and you think, this sucks. But you want to make it to the new system, you want Jehovah to be good and happy with you. Yeah. And so, so you're in it, and so we were in it for a long, long time. And so no birthdays, no Christmas. Because my dad wasn't one, I would often have Christmases and birthdays with him. So I had that sort of appreciation of both sides. So I was in, but I was in, but I also had my dad influencing me, and he was a lawyer. He was a lawyer. He's retired now, and so he often had a very analytical way of thinking, and would often keep probing us to think for ourselves. Yep. And so we grew up in it, and then Yeah, like I mean, yeah, no friends are allowed over. You're not allowed to do any of that sort of social activity. Like I mean, schoolies was a nightmare because I had to sneak off to my dad's house for a week just to go, and had my mum trying to find me where I was, like to bring me home. Like it was intense, mate. And we did nothing wrong, but like it was really intense. So
and like and growing up, like surely like it had like a pretty negative effect on your mindset and mental state of mind. How did you overcome that? Because obviously you couldn't really vent and talk to your family. I mean, your mother's side of the family. I guess maybe you use your dad for that sort of stuff.
Oh, look, I mean, you can talk to Dad. Dad was so busy. He's a partner in a law firm, so like he was working around the clock, and you don't really have anyone to vent to.
When did you actually end up going, you know what, I can't do this anymore. I know it's going to be a difficult thing to do, you know, leaving my family behind, but what made you get to that point of realisation?
Dude, you don't have that level of realisation. It's very rare to have that sort of conscious thought. I know a mate who's just left, and he never had that either. Like, and so you don't have it. So what got us was, and as I said, I'm absolutely certain of this. You need a circuit breaker. You need something to shock you enough to stop for a second and look at it, and look at it without indoctrination. So what happened for us was I was sort of in it. I was in it, but like I would miss meetings every now and like if you don't go, this is the other thing. If you're not there, people are ringing you. Where are you? Elders are ringing you. Where were you tonight? Why weren't you, mate? All the time.
So if for some particular reason you're at work and they've asked you to stay back a couple of hours, or you're just running late, they'll call you to check up on you.
Mate, if you they won't call you that night. They'll like maybe text you the next day or call you and go, "Hey mate, I missed you at the meeting last night." And they say it comes from a place of love, and I mean, on some level it does. But it's a really good mechanism that's fed top down and enforced top down to keep you on that merry-go-round. Because
the way they're going about it is like in a way of love, but at the same time, it's like it's very like demanding.
Very, and I don't think the people who are calling you, like the elders who are calling you, oftentimes a lot of them, I'd say 70-80% of them, are doing it for a reason of they care about you and they want you to make the new system because they love you as a person. But if you actually take a step back and look at it, it's actually a really effective cult tactic to keep everyone in
together.
Yeah, so you keep on top of them, you keep, so, and I don't think they think of it like that, but they think they're doing the right thing. But
probably because they've been doing it for so long that they don't know anything wrong of it.
So we were in it, and what got me out, I was sort of fading a little bit. I was in it, but I would go to rugby on a Tuesday night instead of going to church, and just because I love rugby, and then one night we were getting married, and so my fiance at the time rang me and said, "Come to my one." She lived in another suburb in Brisbane, and I lived in one, and we have churches in our local areas. She said, "Come to mine. I've got a meeting with 2 elders," and I went, and this is like, mind you, so I probably should have said, this is a week out from our wedding, so this is the Tuesday night before our wedding on the Saturday, and she said to me, "It's a bit odd that they're having this discussion with us." Because we were using their Kingdom Hall, that's what they call their church, for our ceremony. And I come into this meeting and they were shocked that I was there, and they said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, Ash has asked me to be here." And they said, "Well, we were really hoping to talk to Ashley." They then start this conversation and they present to us an hour and a half meeting, and they start the meeting by saying to us, "Look, no decisions have been made. We've just been made aware of some information," so someone's dobbed on us, and they said, "We've been made aware of some information and it's been brought to the attention of the body of elders, and we want to just gauge your heart condition, and no decisions have been made." Well, we should reiterate that, no decisions have been made. And I was like, what is going on? We've done nothing wrong. Like, I don't even know what you're talking about.
What the hell are you talking about?
Then they put a photo to me and say, "Well, lucky you're here because we've got this photo of you." So, and he's been stalking on, this is long before Facebook, this is another platform called Bebo, and he's onto my profile, which I don't even have anymore. I closed it down. So he must have used some like web archive tool or something, or someone has kept that photo themselves and handed it in when they've dogged. And it was a photo of myself, my brother, and our best friend at the time. And we did this thing with these girls where we dressed up in their clothes, they dressed up in ours, and we did this catwalk, and whoever did it best, we were on the piss.
Just a piss take,
mate, we were absolutely hammered. And they bring this photo out and they go, this is disgraceful. And so we have these long back and forths and trying to reason with them and say, look, it's an honest mistake, mate. Because in that religion, you get married only when you're baptised in it, and you don't get married to, so you're not in it, and I'm in it, and if you're a girl, I wouldn't be allowed to marry you. And so that was part of the problem. One of the problems was, and this is what we were saying to him, we were saying, you know, other people in our family have got married and they haven't been baptised, they're not in it. We waited until we did the right thing because we were good Christians, quote unquote. And we want to get married in the Kingdom Hall and we want to do the right thing. And this guy was just a dick and got into this sort of like ideological sort of dick measuring contest, really. And he then said to me, what would people, and they say this, in the world, so everyone who's not a Jehovah's Witness, they would say, what would people in the world think? And I said, I don't know, I can't speak for people in the world. I know what my dad would think. He would think it's insane that you would that you're thinking about cancelling a wedding. And then I walked out and I literally never went, I went back to another 3 or 4 meetings in my entire life after that. And I stopped going after that because I was really, out of pride. It was nothing other than pride. Like, I was egotistical and prideful, and I was like, who are these people to tell me that...
You didn't want to take a step back.
Yeah, and I was like, this is ridiculous. We've done nothing wrong. And we ended up getting the situation rectified. We had to, like, appeal all the way to the headquarters in Sydney. We were having phone calls at midnight. Yeah, mate.
Sydney?
Yep. And so it got finally overturned. We were allowed to have it, and the wedding went ahead. But it was a really difficult time. Like, the wedding wasn't approved until Thursday night at like 10:30. So we're still 2 days out, no venue. Like, it was really tough, and like, it really made the event unenjoyable, to be fair. You do lose all your friends. So all your friends since childhood are gone. And because you're not allowed to be friends with people who aren't in the religion, all of your school friends are long gone. Like,
because you were never really...
You're friends with them, no. So, like, if you had left at like 19 or something like that, you probably sort of reconnected with those friends. You could pick it up and go, oh, it's only 6 months, 12 months.
Yeah.
But 26 is too long. And, like, I mean, I could have tried, but they're all moved on and different cities and different lives. And so you sort of got to make your own new friends and you got to start again. Like, my brother, who is my best mate, we grew up very close because Dad left and we lived with Mum, who was like physically and emotionally abusive to us as children, very physically abusive. And so we relied on each other a lot. We were really close, really close. And so when you don't talk to him often, you go from, we went from like seeing Alex like 3, 4, 5 times a week. Every night he'd be over for dinner at our house when we were early married and stuff like that, to we see him once or twice a year. Like, if that. And
is that as a result of him still being a part of this religion?
Yeah. So we went to Nando's one day, and it's honestly, it's the hardest conversation because he's your brother and he's your best friend. And he said to me, dude, I think if you're, long story short, if you're not going to be a witness, we're going to have to like cut or limit our association with you. And I was like, I understand that, mate. Like, I get it because I was in it, so I know exactly how their mind works. But you sort of are treading this fine line between wanting to scream at him and go, you don't understand what you are doing. Like, you have no clue.
You need to be so careful what you say because...
Puts that wall up straight away then. I look at my brother, mate, he could have played any sport he wanted professionally. He could play AFL, tennis, any of the rugby codes or soccer, no joke, professionally. And never pursued any of them because... You're a Jehovah's Witness, you can't play competitive sport. Like, wasted talent, mate. And I coach at a high level. I coach athletes that play representative football. I have. And I'm telling you, he is as good, if not better than all of them. He'd have represented his state, if not country, in any sport. Yeah. And I look at his little boy now, who's an absolute physical specimen. He's a beast. And it'll be another wasted life.
And it's just sad to think that you can't, I guess, live your own way of life and give things a go where you kind of know that you might be potentially good at.
Yeah.
And along the lines of not having a general understanding of this brainwashing. Yeah. I mean, for another example, for listeners, for viewers listening in, it might be a little bit something more they can kind of relate to.
Yeah.
in terms of maybe someone who's an alcoholic, right?
Yeah.
They won't admit it.
No.
Some of the time they actually don't even know they're an alcoholic.
Yeah.
Until you know, it could be 3 or 4 weeks down the track where they've gone, 3 or 4 weeks dry.
Yeah.
And then they hit that point of realization. They go, holy shit! Like I was really drinking, 7 or 8 beers a night, or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Because he hasn't had that point of realization or that circuit breaker moment, like you're saying.
Yeah.
He's stuck in this bubble, and it can't be popped.
Yeah.
He doesn't know what the outside world of this bubble looks like.
Absolutely. And if you don't have that moment, you can't possibly sort of find your way out. I actually had a mate ring me recently. I grew up with him, and he got out, and his friends have all cut him, and he's really struggling. I was 26, so that's old. He's 35, which is even
That's
older again.
old.
That's hard.
Try to like it's a refresher. You got to start life again and try to meet new people.
Well, but how? This is the other part.
How do you do it?
How do you even meet new people? Because when I left when I was 26, I didn't know how to make friends. Because you go to school and you're in a captured, closed environment where you're forced to be friends with someone in that environment. When you're Jehovah's Witness, you are forced to be friends with the people in that environment. Jesus. So when you leave, you don't really have the skills to make friends because you've never had to actually know who you are, know what you like in others, know how to sort of navigate that and actually form a bond or anything like that. Because the bonds you form are only conditional. It's only because you're in it together. Same as when you're at school. Sometimes you're friends with them, sometimes you're not. Yeah. And it's because you're in that sort of barrel, so to speak.
Yeah, wow. And along the lines of isolation and trying to start up fresh and try to figure out how to make friends and whatnot. For those who may be going through similar experiences, whether it be through a cold or just day life, they're not following a particular trend that people deem to be acceptable or a particular policy within today's society. If people are trying to challenge it because they want to stand up and be who they are, and they feel isolated for doing so, what would be the steps that you would put in place to get you over that line?
Isolated. I guess for me, like if I was to talk to a Jehovah's Witness now, I would, and I'm just using them as an example.
Of course.
Maybe try and understand that you're not isolated actually.
Yeah. The
world is a lot bigger and better than what you are led to believe. And that's probably the first thing I would do. I don't really know, I know the first thing I would do was find support groups that were of a like mind to me and shared interests. So whatever that is, quilting or I don't know, rugby, whatever. I'll find those support groups. And that's how I've made my friends, like in my sort of later years and I'm not that old, but is to go, I coach a rugby club and you actually then make mates through there because I've got shared interests with you. So I think it's to find something that you have that shared interest in. The hard part is you don't want to fall back into another, and a lot of people do. A lot of people leave and fall back into another really heavily programmed, because I've got to be honest with you, being a Jehovah's Witness, the one part of it that was good is you are in this perpetual state of naivety. So the world's going to end in like 5 minutes, all the time. That's what you're told. Armageddon is coming now. And if you're not good, God's going to punish you. You're not going to make it into the new system. You're going to burn in hell, sort of thing. I don't believe in hell, but you get the picture. And so when you're out and you realise that's not actually true, then you realise you've got to actually be a real adult and like a real person. And Armageddon is not coming tomorrow. I could live for 70 years more, and what am I going to do? I've got no skills, I've got no... And so you've got to sort of... But I do think for people who are either leaving that sort of an organisation or who are finding themselves ostracised in society, just find people who share similar interests with you. But yeah, so like, I mean, it is really hard. Like I had that guy message me and he was out, or he's leaving, and I think he's really struggling, and I don't think it's the hard part when I say find something that you're interested in is if you're never given any time, because you're at Bible study and church all the time, to figure out who you are, then you don't really necessarily know what you like and what you don't like. And so for him now at 35, he's trying to work it out, and it's proving quite hard. And I know he's really struggling, which is quite difficult. But like, I mean, again, he had a circuit breaker and did the same thing as me, cried a lot, vomited a lot, talked to me on the phone a few times, cried. And when he reached out to me, that was actually one of the hardest conversations I've had. He reached out to me and asked me, why don't you go? And I asked him why, and he sort of alluded to what he was going through. And I actually said to him, I said, I'll give you a heads up. It's the best thing we ever did, but it's also the hardest thing you ever did. Like, you have every support network you have, every friend, every family member ripped away from you. So you've got to be prepared to do that, mate. Like, and he goes, I need it for my own mental health. I can't be in this anymore. And I was like, right, if you want to know, you can know. And so we sort of went through some stuff together, and more power to him, but circuit breaker.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Thank you. I can't believe it.
It's next level, mate.
Mate, thank you.
Oh, good luck. No, it's next level.
Mate, it's been a fascinating story. Yeah. I mean, what you've been through, man, you've come out. I mean, you've come out pretty good.
And it's it's a process, but you're better for it. I think you're better for it from having gone through that adversity.
Yeah.
And I think you probably want to.
No, essentially what I'm gaining out of this, in summary, is that you might be going through something where all your belief systems are that's all you know, because they're the belief systems you've been brought up with, through your family life or just growing up as a child. You've got to have that circuit breaker moment of realization to understand the other perspective. Yeah. Because there's always another perspective.
Absolutely.
You look at someone who might be going a hard time and is a drug addict. And then for me to look at someone doing that, I could be like, look at him, he's a drugger, he's someone who lives on the street, he's a nobody. Yeah. There's a reason why he's in that state of mind. There's another perspective. Yeah, definitely. And it's just a matter of actually allowing yourself to open up and to see the other perspective.